Mr. Speaker.
Christopher Bishop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, that was not a bad effort from Mr. Robertson. You know, Mr. Robertson's speeches on tax bills, and I've heard a few of them in the House now since I've been a Member of Parliament, generally follow a fairly strict formula. There's the generic abuse of David Bennett in the first 2 minutes of the speech, and actually, to be fair to Mr. Robertson, that can be reasonably amusing, because David Bennett is a unique character in the Parliament. He's a superb chair of the Finance and Expenditure Committee that I have the privilege to be on. Shows real leadership, and actually the defamation that he has to suffer from Mr. Robertson is uncalled for. So there's 2 minutes of generic abuse, and it's.
A point of order, Clayton Cosgrove. I hope it is one.
It is, sir. I just wonder if it would be worth reminding the Speaker about misleading the House.
Well, Mr. Cosgrove, I think you are aware of the fact that that is not an appropriate point of order, and therefore you will stand, withdraw and apologise for making it.
I withdraw and apologise.
Chris Bishop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So we start with the 2 minutes from Mr. Robertson about Mr. Bennett. Then we get on to the generic complaints about government tax policy. And the reason Mr. Robertson does this is because the Labor Party does not have a tax policy. So we spend about 3 minutes of a 10-minute speech with complaints about how there's no plan. It's like 2009 Redux all over again, when Labor used to say the government has no plan. Where's the plan, says Mr. Robertson? There's no comprehensive statement of principle. We don't know where they're going with tax policy. We need more fairness and things like that. So there's about 3 minutes of very repetitious behaviour about that. And then we get from Mr. Robertson the sort of, in the last kind of, I guess, quarter of the speech, the cursory references to what is actually in the bill. And to be fair to him, that was not a bad effort, because he spent about half the speech talking about look-through companies and various other things that the bill does. Actually, the government does have a comprehensive tax program that we're implementing. This is part of it. This is the May tax bill. There's 2 tax bills per year. This is what's known as the May tax bill. And if Mr. Robertson bothered to do his reading, he would know that the Inland Revenue Department runs a very comprehensive process called the Generic Tax Policy Process, which is extremely transparent and extremely consultative. They publish tax policy discussion documents. They publish material online. They consult with the various stakeholders, with the companies, with the various interest groups in the area who are affected by tax law. It's extremely transparent. And actually, the bill that we're debating in the House and that is going to go to the Finance and Expenditure Committee for further consideration is actually a fair way along a very consultative process to make sure our tax law is fit for purpose and make sure it is refined every year as we need to do. We have a very large body of tax legislation, the bulk of it which is contained in the Income Tax Act 2007, of course, but we are far better off, sir, than many other countries who have extremely bulky pieces of tax legislation, tax codes. I think if you put the Income Tax Act and the various other pieces of legislation, if you printed them off and stacked them up, I think it gets up to about my height or perhaps one of my colleagues' heights who's a bit shorter than me. But I mean, if you did that to the United States, I suspect you'd be hitting the top of the New Zealand Parliament here with its high stud ceilings and perhaps going a bit further, sir. So we have a very, very good tax system in New Zealand, and the aim of it is to have a comprehensive system that is broad-based and low rates, and that's exactly what this bill does, sir. I only want to make another couple of points. The first is to just highlight for the House that this bill adds 14 organisations to Schedule 2 of the Income Tax Act 2007, which makes these organisations exempt from income tax because they are charities. And that's fair enough. It adds things like the Cambodia Trust, Aotearoa New Zealand, First Steps Himalaya, Hornsby Pacific Education Trust, the Safala Foundation. Fair enough. But you do have to wonder, sir, why is it that we have to pass a piece of legislation through the Parliament, send it to a committee, and in order to add organisations to a schedule to make them exempt from income tax under the Act? Surely this must happen a lot. And I seem to recall about a year ago debating a similar piece of legislation, debating the May tax bill a year ago, and basically probably around about the same time, soon after the budget, in which we did various things to the schedule as well. And I've got to wonder, surely, sir, there is a better way. Surely there is some regulatory process that would take this mechanism outside of the legislature and put it in the hands of ministers acting on behalf of advice or organisations, and I think that would be a better process. So we'll wait and see, and I for one am actually looking forward to exploring why that is the case with officials in Select Committee. I mean, there's one organisation that ceased operations, which was Bicycles for Humanity, which I know, Sir, you'll be interested in as a charity, and I'm also interested in as well. Ceased operations, sadly, I don't know the organisation, but why is it we have to turn up in the Parliament and pass a piece of legislation to remove them from the schedule, to remove them from the charitable status exemption? It just seems a little bit strange. So I'm looking forward to examining that in Select Committee. The second remark I want to make about the substantive policy of the bill, sir, is actually that this bill does do some of the things that Mr Robertson said it wasn't doing. It does actually make some useful contributions to the law around trusts and around multinational tax behaviour. So, sir, this law brings into place rules designed to stop multinational corporations sidestepping withholding taxes and levies that are imposed on interest paid on borrowings by New Zealand operations. And if Mr Robertson had bothered to read the KPMG commentary on the bill, he would have found that out. And, sir, I expect that KPMG, along with the other organisations in this space, will be submitting to the Select Committee, and I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and I'm looking forward to hearing further from the IRD about what exactly we're doing in this piece of legislation, sir, and how that fits into the government's overall tax policy process. Sir, this is a good bill. I think it's going to receive unanimous support to the Select Committee. Looking forward to serving on that redoubtable Finance and Expenditure Committee with my colleagues, Mr Cosgrove, Mr Bennett and others, examining it in more detail.
Mr Speaker,